evening. Welcome back. You are here for Sitting with My Father, a 30-day prayer challenge. I am Tamika. I am the leader of God on the Rise Ministry, which is a prophetic deliverance ministry leading believers back to the heart of God in deeper relationship. So, we're going to jump right into it. This is day 5. And just as a recap for why we're here and what we're doing, we are taking 30 days seek the Lord in prayer. There are many people that want to go deeper in relationship with God, many people who want to grow in relationship with God, but they don't know where to start, or they've been with God and they fell away from him and they are trying to get back. Or maybe you're starting your journey with God for the very first time. If you are, great time to do it. Beginning of the year, everybody's doing New Year's resolutions. I am personally glad you're here. But whatever situation you find yourself in, we are taking these 30 days to intentionally spend time with God and to grow in relationship with Him through the avenue of prayer. And we're going to be focusing on, through this prayer challenge, 5 different categories that we're going to be praying through. First category is intimacy with God. Then we're going into hearing God, knowing God, trusting God, and then following God. And so we're going to be going through all of these areas throughout this challenge. So if you've been here so far, thank you for joining us. We are continuing today talking about our prayer point for today is purify me, Lord, to come closer to you. And we're going to talk about why that's important. So, first of all, we need to know that God does want relationship with us. We're not just pining away after God and He's just sitting back like, whoa, don't come any closer. God wants to be close to us. He wants to have relationship with us. He wants us in His presence. But the one thing we have to remember about God is that God is still holy. God is still God. Hold on one second. I got some notifications coming across my screen. Give me one second. Do not disturb. Okay. God is still holy. And so there is a way that we approach God. You know, I think about it like this. If you met the King of England right now, you wouldn't just walk up to the King of England and just be like, what's up, dude? How you doing? That there's a way that you would approach the King of England. Even if you met the President of the United States right now, if you met President Joe Biden, you wouldn't just walk up to President Biden and just start talking to him like he's a homie off the street. You're going to talk to him with a certain level of respect because there's a way that you approach it because of the authority that he has, the level of authority, because of the position that he has, right? So we have to remember it's the same with God. And I know there are a lot of people who like to think that, God is just common, he's just one of us, and we can talk to him any kind of way. And while that's kind of true in a way, we can talk to God about anything, but there is still a way that we approach God because he is still holy. Okay. And so that's just one thing we just have to remember. And when we talk about the fear of the Lord, I'm not going to get into a whole lot of that today, but I've taught on this before and I'll be teaching on it again. But the fear of the Lord doesn't mean fear as in we're afraid of God per se. It means that we have a certain level of respect for God. We have a certain level of reverence for God. We understand that he is a king. We understand that he is holy. And so we'll act a certain way in his presence. We'll approach him a certain way. We'll talk to him a certain way. But that doesn't mean that we can't still be familiar with him because he is still our father. So hopefully that makes sense. But we do still have to remember that God is holy. God is so holy that sin cannot be in his presence. Now, he is gracious to us to allow us to come close to him to a certain degree. But if you really want to go deep with God, what you will have to do is purify yourself and make yourself holy. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, God is holy. We're going to start with Leviticus chapter 11, verse 44. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 44. Um, yeah, okay. It says, "For I am the Lord your God. You shall therefore consecrate yourselves, and you shall be holy, for I am holy. All right, so we're going to stop there. There's one more sentence in that verse, but we're going to stop right there just for what we're talking about right now. So God is saying, first of all, he's reminding us of who he is. I am the Lord your God, which means that I have the all authority. I have ultimate authority. I am the Lord, but I'm also your God, which means that I have authority over you, but you also have the right and the privilege to come to me. I'm inviting you into my presence, okay? So I am the Lord your God, but you shall therefore consecrate yourselves and you shall be holy. Why? Because I am holy. So God is telling us how to come into his presence right here. But he's also giving us a command. He's not saying, go consecrate yourselves if that's what you feel like doing. Or, you can consecrate yourself if you want, but if not, come on, still in my no, this is a command. You shall therefore consecrate yourselves, and you shall be holy, because I am holy. So let's look at what consecration means. To consecrate, basically, to break it down simply, it just means to purify ourselves, okay? Which means we purify ourselves, we make ourselves morally pure. We cleanse ourselves morally. So what does that mean? I didn't get the definition of morally for today. I should have, but we have a general idea of what morally means, right? It's the morals are a set of beliefs that people hold. Everybody has different morals. You know, one of my morals is you should respect your elders. Okay, that's a general moral. You should respect your elders. It's a belief system, right? So God is telling us that we need to go through our belief systems. We need to evaluate the things that we believe to be true about ourselves, about other people, about the world, and we need to make sure that it is pure. Make sure that it is clean, but not by our standards, by the standard of the Bible, by his standard. He's saying you need to be holy because I am holy, which means his standard of holiness is not our standard of holiness. His standard of being morally pure is not always our standard of being morally pure. We might think that we're fine. We think that we're good people. We think that our hearts are pure. But in the eyes of God, they are not. So he is telling us, you want to come into my presence? You want to know how to approach me? You consecrate yourself. You make yourself pure morally, in your mind, your thought process. Purify your thoughts. Purify, the desires of your hearts. Purify, the spiritual aspects of yourselves. And I'll get into a little bit more detail at another time about, how to really go into it and do that. But for sake of this right now, um, it also says, okay, so our next verse, hold on. Before I say that, the next verse we have is James chapter 4, verse 8. And I got it right here. I'm going to read that in the New Living Translation. I usually read the King James Version, just in case you ever wonder where I'm reading from. Unless I mention anything else, I'm reading from the King James Version. That's my preferred version. That's just what I rather read. I read other versions just to kind of give me a better understanding, but King James is usually my go-to. So James chapter 4, verse 8 in the New Living Translation says, "Come close to God, and God will come close to you. Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, for your loyalty is divided between God and the world." Now, in the King James Version, it says that you are double minded. Excuse me. Double minded just basically means that your mind is in two places at one time. The phrase, what's the phrase? Straddling the fence is a good example of being double minded. You haven't made a decision. You got one foot on one side and one foot somewhere else. You're double minded. And so that's what this means when it says your loyalty is divided between God and the world. You're not fully submitted to God, but you're also not fully submitted to the world. You still got one foot in the world trying to live according to what the world, wants, what the world believes. Morally, you're still committed to the world, but you're also trying to morally commit to God. You're also trying to commit your thoughts and your life to God, but you're divided because the Bible also tells us that you can't have two masters. You can't serve two masters. You either love one and hate the other, but you can't love both at the same time, especially if they have two different thought processes, if they have two different standards, you won't be able to follow both of them because they're doing the opposite of each other, if that makes sense. So it says to come, James 4:8 says to come close to God and God will come close to you. So if you want God to come close to you, if you want to get closer to God, this is how you do it. You wash your hands, you sinners. That's a symbolic thing. It means to wash your hands of sin. Cleanse your life of sin. Now, that's not to say you won't ever sin again, but this means we're not living a life of intentional sin. If you were sleeping around before and it was a continuous intentional thing, you're not intentionally doing that anymore. And you're making it so that you're not putting yourself in a situation to where you could fall into it again. You're intentionally keeping yourself from that sin. You're intentionally purifying yourself in that area. So that's what it means to wash your hands. And then it says purify your hearts. So we talked about how pure to be pure means to be morally pure, pure in your mind, pure in your thoughts, pure in your heart. But your heart, what do we mean by heart? Because obviously we don't just mean this organ pumping in our bodies, right? It has to mean something else because we can't actually cut ourselves open, pull out our heart, wash it up, and put it back in, right? So we know that's not exactly what this is referring to. What is it referring to? Your heart here is referred to as the center of your spiritual life. It's your soul or your mind. Your soul is made up of three parts. It's your mind, your will, and your emotions. Your mind, your thoughts, your will, your decisions, make your decision making process or the decisions you make. And then your emotions, your feelings. So your heart refers to your mind, your will, and your emotions. It's where your thoughts come from. It's the originator of your thoughts, your passions, your desires, any appetites that you have, whether it be um I don't know, a sexual appetite, um educational appetite, whatever you're hungry for in life. Your affections, your purpose, your endeavors, anything that you strive for, anything that you're working towards, all of these things is what God means when he refers to your heart. These are the things you need to purify. You need to purify your desires, your thoughts, your passions, your affections, what you care about. Because we don't want to care about the wrong things and end up in sin that way. So this is what James 4:8 is talking about when it says we need to purify our hearts if we want to come close to God and have God come close to us. Because the thing about it is the closer you come to God, see, God's goal for us has always and will always be holiness. Period. That's God's goal for us. And you can look around. If you really do a study, which I would encourage y'all to do anyway, if you really do a study on what holiness looks like and what holiness means, you'll realize that most Christians are not living holy lives, unfortunately. But this is a requirement of God. God requires us to be holy, especially if we want to get closer to him. And I can show you this in scripture as well. But the closer you come to God, the holier your life will become. It will become something that is you won't even have to think about it anymore. It's not something that you have to, is this holy? Like, should I do? It won't even be something you have to put a lot of thought into. It'll become a habit, just like anything else. Holiness will become a habit for you. It'll become something that is second nature. Um, it'll be something you want to do rather than something you feel obligated to do. Like I just need to do this so I won't go to hell. It's not. We're not motivated to be holy because we don't want to go to hell. We're motivated to be holy because we want to get closer to God. We want to be in his presence. We want to be able to stand in his presence. Holiness, like I said, has always been God's goal for us, and it's because he is holy. So he wants us to become holy as well so that we can come closer to him. All right. So Psalms 24, I'll show you this in Psalm 24, verse 3 and 4. This is also in the New Living Translation. It says, who may climb the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? Only those whose hands and hearts are pure, who do not worship idols and never tell lies. So once again, God is telling us how to get closer to him, how to be able to stand in his presence, how to be able, how to be allowed to come into his presence. Because once again, God is holy. He's a king. He's the King of Kings. You don't just approach a king any kind of way. Okay. So he's letting us know what it will require to come close to him and to actually stand in his presence. And the thing about it, what I've learned too, and what I a lot of Christians don't understand, that we were created as dual beings. In other words, we are spiritual beings that live in a fleshly body, right? We need this fleshly body to be able to move around in the earth because that's what the earth requires, right? But God is not bound to the earth, which is why he doesn't need a body. However, because we're a spirit and we live in a body, we were meant by God, by his original creation, we were meant to be able to walk and to operate in both realms. We're supposed to be able to operate in the spiritual realm, and we're supposed to be able to operate in this natural realm that we live in. Unfortunately, a lot of Christians do not understand this concept. They're not taught. It's not something that's taught a lot. But we are supposed to be able to live in both realms. Um, so a lot of Christians don't understand that we also should be able to have the ability to stand in the literal presence of God. That's an actual thing. But not a lot of people get to achieve that because we don't understand the spiritual realm and because we don't understand holiness. We get so caught up in our carnal nature, we get so caught up in our natural lives that we forget that there's a spiritual side of us as well. And so we're taking care of our natural lives, but we're not taking such good care of our spiritual lives, which is why we can't achieve that level of holiness to be able to stand in the presence of God. But it tells us once again in Psalm 24, who may stand in his holy place, which is in his presence? Only those whose hands and hearts are pure, who do not worship idols. They have only one God, which a lot of Christians have more than one God. That's another thing for another day. And they never tell lies. A lot of Christians are caught up in idolatry. I teach on this a lot too. But for sake of what we're talking about today, so hopefully this is all, I know I'm rambling. Hopefully this is all coming together and making sense for some of you, that we need to be purified in order to stand in the presence of God, in order to get closer to God. And it's a matter of, like I said, God is holy. We have to remember that God is holy. God is still the King of Kings. He still has a certain level of authority that we have to respect. We any kind of way. Yes, he wants to be personal and intimate with us, but he is still God. So we still have to remember who he is, which means that he still requires holiness in our lives. He still requires that we live a life of holiness, that we be purified in our hearts, in our minds, in our emotions. He requires that we be purified, that our hands be cleansed from sin, and that we can come to him and get closer to him to be able to stand in his presence. So for day 6, our prayer point, actually it's kind of a two-part thing, but I would like for us to first ask God to give us a revelation of what it means to be purified, to be pure in his presence, to what it means to have pure hearts, what it means to have clean hands, as Psalm 24 is talking about. And then I would like for us to ask God, teach me or purify me to come closer to you. I want to be closer to you. I want to stand in your presence. Purify me to do that. So for day 6, which is starting tomorrow, these are our prayer points for the day. And like I said, I recommend journaling. I'm a big fan of journaling. When you sit with God, because this is sitting with my Father. When you sit with God to spend that time with him, pull out your journal, write down the thoughts that come to your mind, anything that comes to your mind regarding what you've just asked God. Take some time to listen and expect him to speak to you through your thoughts. Just listen to your thoughts and just write them down. And like I say, once you get used to doing this, it becomes easier to 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 tell when it's God talking to you and when it's just your own thoughts. The more you get to know God, the closer you get to him. You'll be able to tell the difference between your thoughts and the voice of God. So that's all I got for today. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow at 7 p.m. for day 7. Oh, if you want a recap of everything that we've talked about so far, of the different prayer points that we've had so far, I'm going to put a link up in the description of this video where you'll be able to sign up for my email list, and you'll be able to get emails for the daily recaps of everything that we've talked about. But also I recommend too that when you guys get a chance, go back and listen to these videos, play them again, and really, be intentional about getting closer to God. Be intentional about really taking to heart these things that we're talking about. So, because 2025 is going to be the year that many come to the heart of God, that many get closer to Him. There's been so many people, and the Lord has showed this to me too. There's so many people who've been longing to get closer to Him. There's so many people who've been longing to really hear from Him and to really get intimate with Him. And 2025, I believe, is going to be the year that a lot of people will learn to do that. So, tomorrow, 7 p.m., for day 7. I'll leave the link to sign up for my email list if you're interested in the recaps in the description of this video. You guys have a great night. I'll see you back here tomorrow.